This range represents growth of 1 to 2%, excluding a negative impact from foreign exchange of approximately 0.5% using mid-October rates. Our gross margin assumption remains approximately 82%, including an updated estimate of less than $100 million in costs related to the impact of tariffs. Operating expenses are now assumed to be between $25.9 and $26.4 billion. This guidance does not assume additional significant potential business development transactions. Other expense is now expected to be between $400 and $500 million. We now assume a full-year tax rate between 14% and 15%. We assume approximately 2.51 billion shares outstanding. Taken together, our EPS guidance is $8.93 to $8.98. Relative to 2024, this range includes a negative impact from foreign exchange of approximately 15 cents using mid-October rates. Recall, our prior guidance midpoint was $8.92. Our current guidance midpoint of $8.96 reflects a benefit from the restructured agreement for Koselugo of 9 cents, partially offset by an estimated negative impact related to the acquisition of Verona of 4 cents. As you consider your models, there are a few items to keep in mind. For Keytruda, as previously communicated, year-over-year growth in the U.S. in the fourth quarter is expected to be negatively impacted by approximately $200 million due to the timing of wholesaler purchases. For Enflonsia, we are pleased with the initial purchases in the U.S. Keep in mind that most of this was stocking ahead of expected usage in this RSV season. Lastly, as Rob noted, we have one of the most robust pipelines in our recent history. Importantly, all of our major programs are advancing, and we are excited about the additional opportunities in front of us. As we have said before, we intend to fully invest behind these opportunities, and as we look to 2026, we expect an acceleration in underlying operating expense growth driven by investment in both R&D and SG&A to fuel our pipeline and new launches, including more than $500 million of investment to maximize the potential of Ohtuvayre. This will enable us to continue to bring forward innovative medicines and vaccines to make a difference in the lives of patients and drive growth for our company. Now turning to capital allocation, where our strategy remains unchanged. We will prioritize investments in our business to drive near and long-term growth. We will continue to invest in our key growth drivers and expansive pipeline of novel candidates, each of which has significant potential to address important unmet medical needs. We remain committed to our dividend with the goal of increasing it over time. Business development remains a high priority, and we are well positioned to pursue additional science-driven, value-enhancing transactions. We are maintaining our increased pace of share repurchases and expect approximately $5 billion for the full year. To conclude, as we finish the year, we are confident in the outlook of our business, driven by global demand for our innovative inline portfolio, the exciting progress we are seeing with our many product launches, and our exceptional pipeline. With continued investment in innovation and our ongoing focus on execution, we remain well positioned to deliver value to patients, customers, and shareholders now and well into the future. With that, I'd now like to turn the call over to Dean.
Thank you, Caroline. Good morning, everyone. The third quarter was marked by several notable clinical and regulatory milestones. I will start with updates in oncology, followed by vaccines and infectious disease, immunology, ophthalmology, and then cover advancements in our cardiovascular and pulmonary programs. I will close by highlighting key upcoming events through the first half of 2026. Progress continues across our diverse oncology portfolio. Last month, we received FDA approval for KEYTRUDA QLEX injection for subcutaneous administration of pembrolizumab. KEYTRUDA QLEX offers a substantially quicker administration time than intravenous infusion of KEYTRUDA and can be administered subcutaneously by a healthcare provider in as little as 1 minute when given every 3 weeks. It has the potential to provide flexibility in the site of care while helping to increase efficiency in and access to healthcare systems. We also see opportunity for use in certain patients with earlier stage disease. To date, KEYTRUDA-based regimens have received FDA approval for 10 indications in the earlier setting. Last month, the European Medicines Agency's Committee for Medicinal Products for Human Use granted a positive opinion for subcutaneous administration of KEYTRUDA. The European Commission has approved KEYTRUDA as part of a perioperative regimen for the treatment of certain adult patients with resectable, locally advanced head and neck squamous cell carcinoma based on the Phase 3 KEYNOTE-689 trial. We continue to build upon the extensive body of evidence for KEYTRUDA in multiple indications spanning both earlier and metastatic stages of disease. At the European Society for Medical Oncology Congress, data from the KEYTRUDA program were showcased in 2 presidential symposium sessions. These include progression-free and overall survival results from KEYNOTE-B96 in certain patients with platinum-resistant recurrent ovarian cancer. The FDA has accepted our sBLA for priority review and set a PDUFA date of February 20th. Also at ESMO, event-free and overall survival data from KEYNOTE-905 in patients with muscle-invasive bladder cancer who were ineligible for cisplatin-based chemotherapy conducted in collaboration with Astellas and Pfizer were presented. The FDA has also accepted this sBLA for priority review with a PDUFA date of April 7th. The success of KEYTRUDA has enabled us to build a diversified oncology pipeline. At ESMO, data from our growing portfolio of antibody-drug conjugate candidates were also presented, including results for sac-TMT, our TROP2 targeting ADC, from the Phase 3 OptiTROP Lung-04 study in patients with EGFR-mutated non-small cell lung cancer conducted by our collaborator, Kelun. Finding from Kelun's Phase 3 OptiTROP Breast-02 study evaluating sac-TMT in locally advanced or metastatic HR-positive, HER2-negative breast cancer, as well as results from the Phase 2/3 REJOICE Ovarian-01 study evaluating RDXD, our CDH6 targeting ADC, in certain patients with platinum-resistant ovarian, primary peritoneal, or fallopian tube cancer in collaboration with Daiichi Sankyo. Also, earlier this week, we were pleased to announce positive results for WELIREG, our first-in-class oral HIF-2 alpha inhibitor across adjuvant and advanced renal cell carcinoma based on 2 Phase 3 trials, LIGHTSPARK-22 in combination with KEYTRUDA and LIGHTSPARK-11 in combination with LENVIMA in collaboration with Eisai. Next, to vaccines and infectious disease. Starting with CAPVAXIVE, our 21-valent pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. Following the approval in the U.S. and EU, in August, the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare granted approval for CAPVAXIVE for the prevention of pneumococcal infections in the elderly and adults at high risk. We are also evaluating the potential of CAPVAXIVE in additional patient types. At the European Society of Clinical Microbiology and Infectious Diseases Conference on Vaccines, results of the Phase 3 STRIDE-13 trial examining the safety, tolerability, and immunogenicity in children and adolescents aged 2 to 17 years who are at increased risk of pneumococcal disease were presented. The FDA has accepted for review the sBLA and set a PDUFA date of June 18th. Regarding RSV, following approval in June, Enflonsia, our long-acting monoclonal antibody for the prevention of RSV disease in infants entering or during their first RSV season, is now available. Early this month, we received a positive CHMP opinion from the European Medicines Agency. Turning to HIV, we have development programs spanning both treatment and PrEP settings, anchored by our investigational NRTTIs, islatravir and MK-8527. Earlier this month, new findings were presented at the European AIDS Conference, including 48-week phase 3 data for doravirine and islatravir as a once-daily oral 2-drug regimen for the treatment of adults with virologically suppressed HIV-1 infection on antiretroviral therapy, and 96-week phase 2 outcomes data for the investigational once-weekly oral combination of islatravir with lenacapavir for adults with virologically suppressed HIV-1 infection in collaboration with Gilead. Moving to immunology, then ophthalmology. Tulisokibart is a humanized monoclonal antibody that targets tumor necrosis factor-like cytokine 1A that is associated with inflammation and fibrosis. The phase 3 ATLAS trial in ulcerative colitis recently completed enrollment, and the phase 3 ARES trial in Crohn's disease remains on track. Building on these studies, we recently announced an expansion of the development program evaluating tulisokibart in dermatology and rheumatology indications with the initiation of 3 phase 2b trials. Since the acquisition of iBio last year, we have made significant progress advancing the phase 3 clinical development program for MK-3000, our novel candidate targeting the Wnt pathway for certain retinal diseases. Enrollment in the phase 3 Brunello study in patients with diabetic macular edema is complete, and the study's primary completion date has been accelerated to September 2026. Super Tuscan, a phase 2 study evaluating MK-3000 in patients with neovascular age-related macular degeneration as well as retinal vein occlusion, is currently enrolling. In addition, earlier this month at the iCelerator event hosted by the American Academy of Ophthalmology, we presented promising first-time phase 1 data from the Rioja study evaluating MK-8748, our tetravalent bispecific antibody targeting Tie2 and VEGF, in patients with macular edema secondary to branch retinal vein occlusion and neovascular age-related macular degeneration. Based on these data, we plan to initiate late-stage trials in 2026. Next, to our cardiovascular and pulmonary programs. Winrevair, the first and only activin signaling inhibitor for the treatment of adults with pulmonary arterial hypertension, continues to generate evidence for benefit across a broad spectrum of patients with PAH. Results from the phase 3 Hyperion trial in recently diagnosed adults with PAH were presented at the European Respiratory Society meeting. Adding Winrevair on top of background therapy showed a significant 76% reduction in risk of clinical worsening events compared to background therapy alone, despite early termination of the study due to loss of clinical equipoise. The findings were also published in the New England Journal of Medicine. The FDA also recently approved an update to the Winrevair product label based on the results of the phase 3 Zenith trial. With the expanded indication, Winrevair is the first PAH therapy to have an indication that includes components of the clinical worsening events hospitalization for PAH, lung transplantation, and death. With the closing of the Verona Pharma acquisition, we welcomed new colleagues to the team. Together, we are well positioned to build upon the success of Ohtuvayre, a first-in-class dual phosphodiesterase 3 and 4 inhibitor for the maintenance treatment of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. We plan to advance the ongoing work in bronchiectasis and evaluate utility in additional indications, combination therapies, and alternative formulations. Despite advances in the screening and treatment, there continues to be a cardiovascular disease epidemic with ASCVD as the leading cause of death globally. In September, we announced that enlicitide, our investigational oral PCSK9 inhibitor, met all primary and key secondary endpoints in the Coral Reef Lipid Study, demonstrating statistically significant and clinically meaningful reduction in LDL cholesterol for the treatment of adults with hypercholesterolemia on a moderate or high-intensity statin or with documented statin intolerance. This is the third positive phase 3 trial for enlicitide. We look forward to presenting the detailed results of the Coral Reef Lipid Study as well as a Coral Reef study focused on familial heterozygous hypercholesterolemia at the American Heart Association Scientific Sessions meeting next week in New Orleans. Please mark your calendars for an investor event at AHA on the evening of Sunday, November 9th, where we will highlight these results and provide an overview of our cardiovascular and pulmonary program. We continue to see strong momentum across the pipeline. As Rob noted, there are approximately 80 phase 3 trials underway across multiple therapeutic areas. We have initiated more than 15 phase 3 trials this year and expect to have an increasing number in 2026. As we look through the first half of 2026, we anticipate a regular cadence of milestones across therapeutic areas, including, in oncology, the February 20th PDUFA date for certain patients with platinum-resistant recurrent ovarian cancer based on Keynote B96, the April 7th PDUFA date for certain patients with earlier stage MIBC based on Keynote 905. In HIV, the April 28th PDUFA date for the combination of doravirine and islatravir, an oral once-daily treatment regimen, and data from the phase 3 ISLEND 1 and 2 trials evaluating islatravir in combination with lenacapavir as a once-weekly oral treatment regimen. In immunology, phase 2 data for tulisokibart from the ATHENA study in SSc-ILD. In cardiopulmonary for Winrevair, data from the phase 2 CADENCE study in pulmonary hypertension due to left heart disease. For enlicitide, presentation of detailed results from 3 phase 3 trials from the Coral Reef Development Program. We continue to make progress with a diversified pipeline across multiple therapeutic areas, and I look forward to providing further updates on our programs in 2026. And now, I turn the call back to Peter.
Thank you, Dean. Julie, we're now ready for Q&A. If I could request that analysts limit themselves to one question apiece today, we need to end at the top of the hour. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. You may withdraw your question at any time by pressing star 2. If you are using a speakerphone, please pick up the handset before pressing the numbers. Once again, if you have a question, you may press star 1. One moment, please, for our first question. Our first question comes from Asad Haider with Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Great. Thanks for taking the question. Maybe for Rob on BD, I was reassured to hear in the prepared remarks that you are assessing potential targets with urgency, and certainly your Verona deal seemed well received, and it seems that the market wants to see more of those types of transactions from you. So I guess any updated framing on what you're looking for would be helpful. And then related, there's also been an ongoing pickup in discussions about the potential reemergence of potentially transformative larger transactions in the industry, just given the external environment. So curious if you could share your updated views there. Thank you.
Great. Asad, thanks for the question. As it relates to business development, as you point out, we were very excited about getting the closure of the deal with Verona, and as you know, we continue to see Ohtuvayre as a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. So excited about that, but as we've also said, we're not done. We do need to do more. We continue to look across all therapeutic areas. I would say, obviously the areas of focus for us continue to be aligned with what is our key therapeutic areas from the business perspective. Oncology continues to see a lot of opportunities. Immunology, cardiometabolic, and the like are where we're continuing to focus. As is always the case, science will drive us. And when we see a scientific opportunity where there's an unmet need that we think strategically aligns with our approach, if we see value, we'll move. So no change in our approach. And as you think about deal size, we continue to be focused in that $1 to $15 billion range as the primary area. But as we've been clear to say in the past, we are willing to go larger than that, but always with the focus on science and always understanding that if we look and see an opportunity, we're going to do it based on that unmet need. As you think forward to your broader question on the reemergence of potential larger scale deals, our view of that has not changed. We do not think that a transformative acquisition, a synergy-driven deal, is something that we need to do nor aligns with our future because, as you know, we have one of the most robust pipelines we've ever had, and we see large synergy-driven deals as disruptive to that activity. And so our focus will be on bringing in pipeline assets, not on those types of deals. But as you think about that, as we said in the past, we're open to phase 1 all the way through phase 3, and where we can find it, commercial opportunities. So we look across the full spectrum.
Great. Thank you, Asad. Next question, please, Julie.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jeff Meacham with Citibank. Please go ahead.
Great. Morning, everyone. Thanks for the question. I had a pipeline one for Dean. So on the expanding development of your TLO1 in immunology, I'm assuming that a broad development program was already in place surrounding the Prometheus deal, but maybe talk about the selection of the indications that you just announced from a mechanism perspective, and maybe what additional development opportunities do you like across the I&I space? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I mean, the focus initially was in the GI space, and our ambition is to be the first and best-in-class TL1A. We've always talked about that expansion. We've always thought about that expansion, and that expansion has been recently sort of outlined with recent phase 2b studies in rheumatology and dermatology. The question is, could we see more? I will always leave that open. I do think that the phase 3 for ulcerative colitis, and especially for Crohn's disease, is very important to me, not just because it's in GI, but in Crohn's, there's an element of fibrosis. And the other one is the phase 2 in SSc-ILD. I'll need to see that, because if I see that and Crohn's disease, then you all of a sudden start talking about not just similar to other anti-cytokines, dampening down inflammation. You then have a leverage in terms of fibrosis. And that would steer us in relationship to what we would do next.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Next question, please, Julie.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Akash Tewari with Jefferies. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks so much. So your team has talked about a 1.0 and 2.0 solid tumor strategy, with 1.0 being STAC-TMT, and then 2.0 is combining the ADCs with the PD-1 VEGF. At ESMO, it looked like your TROP2 is showing a 6 to 12-month benefit on overall survival. At least it's trending that way in second line. And that's triple what we're seeing with the PD-1 VEGF. So what gets you more excited? The signal you're seeing with your TROP2 or the PD-1 VEGF class, and how does that impact your appetite to potentially run another round of phase 3 combo trials with the Lenova asset? Thank you.
Yeah, so I should probably reset. I don't believe that we've said anything in relationship to how you've talked about it in terms of the different phases. We are extremely excited about the TROP2, the STAC-TMT, and we've had a productive relationship with Kelun. One of the things I would just emphasize is it's very easy to sit there and say, oh, this is a TROP2 ADC, and we throw all the TROP2 ADCs in a bucket as if they're not different. I think the recent data suggests that there may be differences, and we're really interested as we move 15 phase 3 studies, but 10 of them are actually in places where the other TROP2s haven't gone. So we're very interested in pushing the SAC-TMT with and in the appropriate place with IO or with other precision targeted. In relationship to the PD-1 VEGF, we're also interested in advancing that and seeing that data just evolve, not just with us, but from the outside world. And that will define to us where we would put the PD-1 VEGF in relationship to PD-1. But I just want to make sure that we're very excited about the SAC-TMT. We've shown data. Keelan has shown data. You've highlighted how it's different. We believe that we're eager to see the trials that can drive that in not just in the Chinese patient populations, but in the U.S. and globally.
Great. Thanks, Akash. Next question, please.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Evan Seigerman with BMO Capital Markets. Your line is open.
Hi, guys. I wanted to just touch on the influenza launch in the United States. Heading into RSV season, can you just talk about the initial feedback, say, versus the competition, and kind of what you're seeing in terms of potential uptake as we head into RSV season? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I'll start, and then if Caroline wants to jump in, she can as well. Overall, we feel good about where we are with influenza. If you look at how that launch has progressed, I would point out that while we did receive, obviously, all the full approvals, we were a couple of weeks later than initially expected. So that did play into this because it put us a little bit later into the season. We did highlight, as Caroline pointed out in the prepared remarks, there was $75 or $79 million of initial stocking, and that really was the seeding order from the VFC as well as other wholesaler distributor stocking. So as we sit here right now looking at the season and into next year, we really continue to see an opportunity. I would point out, if you think about the benefits influenza brings, there's no weight-based dosing, our ability to look at our total contracted portfolio of vaccines, all of the things we've talked about continue to make us believe this will be a very important vaccine. And as we look forward into 26 and beyond, we continue to see that. We'll see where the rest of 25 plays out, but it's all in all, given the timing when we started, we feel good.
And just to add to Rob's comments, we had the seeding order in the third quarter. We expect that to be utilized during the fourth quarter. Feedback from customers has been very good, and we look forward to having an impact this season and much more of an impact as we go into 2026.
Great. Thanks, Evan. Next question, please.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Daina Graybosch with Leerink Partners. Your line is open.
Hi. Thank you for the question. I wonder if you could give us an update on Keytruda and the proportion of the sales that you have from early stage settings and a breakdown of which of those tumor types of the 10 approved is driving that revenue. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start, Dana, and then Caroline can jump in as well. So if you recall, if you look at where we are in the earlier stage setting, we have currently 10 approved indications, now 5 with overall survival, which is important. And if you look at where we are going forward, the drivers of that, in that cervical continues to be important, RCC, we continue to see TNBC and non-small cell lung cancer, all are important drivers. We're obviously excited. We don't have approval yet, but you heard that we have yet another potential OS benefit coming, 905, I believe it is, that Dean spoke about earlier. So yet more coming, and that's in muscle-invasive bladder cancer. So a lot out there. We're excited about where it goes. It's driving over half of our growth right now is coming from earlier stage indications, and we achieved, if you look back to, we indicated we would be at 25% in 2024. In 25, we're exceeding 25%. We've not given specific targets, but we see it growing as a percent overall of total sales, and it's over half of our growth. So it is an important driver, especially as we think about the QLEX launch that is just starting to get underway.
Great. Thanks, Dana. Next question, please.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Chris Schott with J.P. Morgan. Please go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much. Just, Rob, a question on MFN. Appreciate the color and the prepared remarks. But just following some of the recent deals with the administration, both with Pfizer and Astra, should we be thinking about this type of structure as a reasonable framework for the industry? And just any updates in terms of where Merck is in terms of its discussion with the administration on MFN? Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, thanks for the question. As I said in the prepared remarks, overall, we're aligned with what the administration is trying to achieve, which is to lower the out-of-pocket costs for patients at the pharmacy counter, and at the same time to get foreign prices up to ensure that foreign governments are paying their fair share. So those broad-based principles we're aligned with. We are in continuing discussions with the administration. I'm not going to give any specific updates other than to say I am very optimistic that we're going to have a constructive outcome to those discussions. And the framework, we'll wait until we actually have something to talk about there to be more specific to how we see ours coming out.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Next question, please, Julie.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Carter Gould with Cantor. Your line is open.
Good morning. Thanks for taking the question. You had a pair of good WellReg data recently. So, Dean, I wanted to ask you around your confidence on ultimately hitting on OS in the 022 study and the importance of that in moving the needle on adoption in that setting.
Yeah, so we are equally excited about the WellReg. It's a first-in-class treatment. We've announced the top-line phase 3 for the second line as well as the adjuvant. And I also think it's important that in one of the trials, the ability of a HIF-2 alpha to do something on top of a VEGF blocking agent is important. In relationship to OS, I think OS is always really important. It's important for the FDA, but most importantly, it's important for patients. So we are really eagerly awaiting to see if and when we cross that boundary. And so, yeah, we are excited, and we have a broad portfolio program in WellReg, and so we'll be anxious to share those results when we get them.
Great. Thank you, Carter. Next question, please, Julie.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Terrence Flynn with Morgan Stanley. Your line is open.
Hi. Thanks for taking the question. Caroline, I know you commented somewhat on expenses for 2026. I was just wondering if you can give us any comments on the top line in terms of some of the pushes and pulls as we think about that, recognizing you probably don't want to give guidance yet at this point, but just maybe help us think through some of the levers there. Thank you.
Yes, of course, Terrence. So as we go into 2026, we are expecting solid top-line growth for our company. And that growth will increasingly be fueled by the number of new launches that we have. So we're expecting continued patient impact and revenue growth from Winrevair. Ohtuvayre now is also part of the Merck portfolio. We have Capvaxive, which is off to a very strong start, and Influenza. And on top of that, we have our animal health business, where growth will also be driven by new launches, including Bravecto Quantum, the 12-month injection, as well as Numelvi, our new dermatology product. We also have the expectation of continued growth in oncology. So the last question, WellReg, has strong growth with greater potential ahead of it as we get into other successful studies and treat a broader range of patients. And we do expect continued growth in Keytruda, albeit at a slightly slower pace than we've seen, as we are getting to peak penetration in some of the indications, and we do expect some headwind from price in our ex-US markets. The other headwinds that we will face will be related to loss of exclusivity and generic entrants. And that really is deficit that's seen generic entrant halfway through 2025 in the US, Bridion, which will have its LOE partway through 2026. And we also expect the headwind of IRA price setting on the Januvia family and the generic entrant for Januvia midway through next year. But overall, confident in our ability to continue to positively impact patients and drive solid growth.
Great. Thank you, Terrence. Next question, please, Julie.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Umer Raffat with Evercore. Your line is open.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my question. I was wondering if I should ask about Organon situation, but I realize it's multiple years removed, standalone company, so maybe there's not a whole lot you could say anyways. So let me focus instead on Cadence trial instead. And Dean, my question is, it finished late September. You're indicating first half 26. It sounds to me like that's a little longer than I would have expected to get the readout out there on a 150-patient trial. So could you just catch us up on your thought process there? Thank you.
Yeah, so just as everyone knows, we have Zenith, Hyperion, earlier in disease. Those data have come through. We have a primary completion date of Cadence this year, and we said that we would be presenting it to the data in a meeting. I believe that we will be putting out a top line once we know it as well. So when we talked about the first half of, or the first quarter or first half of 2026, we were talking about the full data at a medical meeting. We are eager to see that results because that result will suggest to us how much we can use Winrevair outside of the patient population that's formerly PAH. And so we're eager to see those results as well.
Great. Thank you, Umer. Next question, please.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Courtney Breen with Bernstein. Your line is open.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for taking my question today. Just coming back to some of the White House price policy pressures and comments you've made already. I wanted to ask this in a slightly different way. If we look at kind of Merck's ratio of revenue today, it's about 50-50 inside the U.S. versus outside the U.S. How different do you expect that to be in 5 years' time, and how much of that could be attributed to product mix, and how much down to kind of equalization of price? Thank you so much.
Yeah, Courtney, thanks for the question. I'm not going to get into specific guidance. You know, obviously, if you look at where our business is driving, we're excited about the diversity of the pipeline we're bringing. A lot of those opportunities disproportionately will be U.S.-based, primarily just because of the nature of the drugs and the uptakes and the value you can assert to the U.S. market. So, you know, mix will affect how we look forward. How MFN or other pricing dynamics change, it's too early to say because we need to see what it is. And so I would leave it at that for right now.
Great. Thanks, Courtney. Next question, please, Julie.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Vamil Divan with Guggenheim Securities. Your line is open.
Great. Thanks for taking my question. So appreciate the comments around 2026 and how to think about some of the drivers there. I had a question just more on Gardasil. Maybe it's a good thing that we haven't talked much about Gardasil yet on this call, but just obviously a challenging year for that product. I'm curious how you think about that product. So in 2026 and beyond, both in the U.S., where obviously there's been sort of evolving sentiment around vaccinations and maybe some could be an adjustment to the guidelines around the U.S. recommendations, but also then ex-U.S., given you'll be annualizing out of the China and Japan impact. So just any sense of how I think consensus is expecting a sort of robust return to growth for that product over the next several years. Just curious how you're thinking about that. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Vamil. So Gardasil remains a very important product, and we're really proud of the impact that we're having in helping protect people from certain HPV-related cancers. As we look forward, in the United States, indeed today, we are seeing growth in our vaccinations in the 9-10 age group, as well as the mid-adult segment. And that's being offset by a lower level in the adolescent segment. And that's really driven by a reduction in the eligible population, and there are some macro factors there. As we look forward for the United States, we are hopeful for growth, but clearly, as you mentioned, the ACIP recommendation around that dosing schedule will very much impact whether we do or don't grow in the United States. And as we've said before, we will always look at having the appropriate price point in the United States based on the value that we are providing society. Outside of the United States, you rightly note that we will lap the impact of China, as well as the reduction in the cohort for the catch-up in Japan as we go through 2026. So we look forward to protecting more people around the world. What we're seeing in countries outside of the United States, some of the public programs have really reached maturity, so we expect a routine cohort to be vaccinated each and every year. The private market is a great opportunity for growth for us, and that's really in the mid-adult segment, age 27 through 45, where we're creating the system to enable people to get vaccinated in many countries around the world. And it's also in some countries in the broad age cohort. So we will be working to activate that cohort. It does take time, but we'll be activating that cohort to drive growth in the private segment as we go forward. Overall, we expect modest growth for Gardasil in the near term.
Great. Thanks, Vamil. Next question, please.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Louisa Hector with Berenberg. Your line is open.
Hello. Thank you for taking my question. Just back to Keytruda, could you just update us on your latest expectations for conversion from IV to subcutaneous and the kind of pace that we could expect? And with that in mind, Caroline, you made a comment on Keytruda growth at a slower pace for 26. So just to check whether that is the overall franchise or IV only, and will you report the sales separately? Thank you.
Yeah, Louisa, this is Rob. I'll maybe start, and then Caroline can address the last part of your question. So if you look at expectations for QLEX, as we've said, it's early in the launch, but everything appears to be on track, and there's no changes to what we previously communicated. We continue to expect that we're going to achieve 30 to 40% patient adoption, and that'll take us out to 18 to 24 months to achieve that. So nothing has changed there. I would highlight, as we've pointed out in the past, that we will have permanent J-code, but we won't get that probably for 6 months. And during that first 6-month window, you can anticipate a slower uptick just because with people using temporary J-codes, there can be longer reimbursement windows, and so some people will hesitate to order until they have the permanent J-code. We've done everything we can to learn from the other subcutaneous products that have launched ahead of us. I can tell you that we've put in place, I believe, a commercial contracting strategy that really will make it frictionless sorry, to convert patients over, or in cases of new patients, to adopt the therapy, and that's important to make sure that we are driving this, because access and conversion are what is our goal, or adoption is the goal we have moving forward. I'll let Caroline speak to her comments about the overall growth next year.
Yes, so Louisa, the comments I gave were with regards to Keytruda in its entirety, where we expect Keytruda to slow, although be an important contributor to growth for our company. Within that, to Rob's point, we are really excited about the contributions that QLEX can bring as we do provide treatment options for more and more patients as next year unfolds.
And we will anticipate reporting separately in 2026.
Yes, we will.
Right.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, maybe last question, please, Julie.
Thank you. Our last question comes from Alex Hammond with Wolfe Research. Your line is open.
Thanks for taking the question. On iBio, can you help with the phase 3 Brunello result in context? What's the bar to deem the trial a success? And I guess given the competitive nature of this indication, how do you plan to execute commercially?
Well, let me just say that we're really excited about pushing this first-in-class MK3000 novel candidate targeting the Wnt pathway. I would just remind, I believe this is the first time a novel mechanism has been pushed through in relationship to having clear human genetic evidence for it. And we plan to evaluate that MK3000 not just in diabetic macular edema, but also neovascular age-related macular degeneration as well. In terms of commercial sort of execution, I would hold off until we see the data from these trials, but we're pushing very fast and very forward in relationship to this, because this could be one of the first new mechanisms, kind of like the Winrevair story, where it's the first generally new mechanism that can make a profound effect on such a broad disease.
Yeah, and maybe just to add a little bit on the commercial opportunity. If you look at where we are today in the United States, there's about 1.6 million patients with diabetic macular edema. So this is the leading cause of vision loss in people with diabetes. And so as you look at that population, still there's a very large opportunity because 30 to 40% of patients on therapy are not responsive to the current anti-VEGF. So the ability potentially to see conversions is significant. If you look, it's about a $13 billion market today, and we believe that our ability to drive that